Hey everyone, and Tony here with a review of Saving Mr. Banks, which was shown at the Cinestar movie theaters at Potsdamer Platz. The film was directed by John Lee Hancock. It was produced by Alison Owen, Ian Colley, and Philip Stoyer. It was written by Kelly Marcel and Sue Smith, and it stars Emma Thompson, Tom Hanks, Paul Giamatti, Jason Schwartzman, B.J. Novak, Bradley Whitford, Colin Farrell, Rachel Griffiths, and Ruth Wilson. And it also stars Annie Rose Buckley. Now, this is a film that I've heard a lot of positive things about, specifically from online reviewers, the Black Critic guy, aka Tony Whatley II, and AniMat, known in real life as Matt Brunet. They've basically said a lot of positive things about this movie, and I checked it out myself and I was actually really taken aback and I actually agree with them. This movie was very emotional and it was just beautiful to watch because of all the emotions. And sure, this was based on a true life story of the development of Disney's Mary Poppins, which was based from P.L. Travers's book of the same name. And it really shows that it's not just some documentary, but it's really life folding in front of our very eyes through the eyes of Mrs. P.L. Travers. And it does show some glimpses of her own life, specifically from her childhood. Now, story wise, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record because in the past reviews that I made, I've mentioned that every film that I watch was engaging. Now, this is no exception. It was engaging on every level, and it was so emotional, so relatable, so powerful that it just completely blew me in. And it was just a great experience. I mean, this is not just Walt Disney's story, this is P.L. Travers's story. We see her life in her childhood of how happy she was with her father, even though she wasn't really aware of his alcoholism until much later in the film, and everything else in between, which is why she becomes this hard nosed, strict, conservative type of person that she's represented in the film. And it really shows that there are a lot of great things happening in this film, especially in the eyes of Mrs. Travers. We see just how fragile she can be, not in front of everybody, but just by herself. But in front of everybody, she hides that fragility and shows off a more strict and adamant side. But behind closed doors, she has this type of fragility that we can all relate to. And we can see that all unfold in the flashbacks that we had when we see Pamela Travers as a child and her birth name was Helen Goff. We could see her childhood in the beautiful landscapes of Australia. We could see the happiness that she felt with her father, the closeness that she had with him. But I'll get into her character much later in this review. But this story, even though I'm going to sound like a broken record, was very engaging and very emotional. And yes, the people behind this movie really treated the development story of Mary Poppins between Walt Disney and P.L. Travers with such respect, beauty, and dignity, and with a lot of magic as well, even though I might say it as cliched as possible. But still, it's that great. And it's so heartfelt. It's so visionary. It's just that powerful, especially in the final parts, which I dare not spoil. Now, cinematographically speaking, like I said, everything was well shot. everything was well handled, and I especially like those close up shots, especially of the reaction shots that Mrs. Travers has when she's in her room, thinking to herself, talking to herself of what's happened in her past, every moment that she's reliving, and you basically feel that for her. So, definitely, the cinematography in this movie was solid. Same thing I can say about the writing. The writing really brims with empathy, beauty, and honesty. Everything was completely honest. There was no faking out, no pretentious bullshit whatsoever. This was very honest. This film, in its entirety, was honest to the point where I almost kind of broke down because that's just how beautiful it was, especially showing Travis's childhood. And now we get to the characters, which I have to say was pretty much the strongest part of this film. Now, P.L. Travers was very, very likable as a character, and she's also a real life person as well. And in this movie in particular, we do see that she is this uptight, stuck up, um, very conservative minded type of British woman who is actually Australian. But we do see that type of haughty and that closed, stuck up attitude that Miss Travers has. But much later in the film, she develops a lot more. And it's shown in those flashbacks as a child with her father and her family. We could really see why she became the woman that she is today. It's all because of her childhood. Everything in her past has, one way or the other, affected her of who she is today. We could see why she is this stuck up type of person who can be quite difficult to work with. But that doesn't mean we can't sympathize with her. And the flashbacks really do a fantastic job in making me root for P.L. Travers to have her happy ending and to even show a lot more sides to her that I've never really seen before. So ultimately, I can really relate to Miss Travers because, well, who hasn't really had a lot of family problems in the past? Who hasn't really dealt with such a dysfunctional family? I'm sure everybody does. But what she goes through in her family as a child was quite painful. Even though she's enjoying her moments with her father, well, there are times that he's drunk and he gets angry and he's almost on the verge of dying because of his alcoholism. And ultimately, I've been rooting for Miss Travers from the start. Not to mention, she does have some funny moments here and there. Like, one of those funny moments was when she basically took away all of those Disney cartoon plush toys, Goofy, Pluto, um, Minnie, Daisy, and she just shoves them into the dresser along with the candies and all of those sweet treats that were offered, which is just so full of it all. And then she stuffs them all in the dresser and she throws the pears out the window. And the pears also play a very important part in the film because of one of those flashbacks, which I dare not spoil. Just go ahead and watch it yourself, and you'll see what I mean. But ultimately, she throws the Mickey Mouse plush toy on the floor where she has her bed. And another fun moment with Travers was when she was tapping her feet while she was sitting on her chair listening to Let's Go Fly a Kite. Especially when she was like clicking her heels. It was almost reminiscent of Dorothy when she was clicking her heels and saying, "There's no place like home" from The Wizard of Oz. I thought it really resembled that just beautifully and very amusingly. It kind of made me smile and laugh, but more than anything, I was able to see just how Peel Travers grew up as a character, and it just was beautifully done with such solid writing and with such an honest type of storytelling, especially to someone as influential as Peel Travers. And then we have Walt Disney himself. He starts out very friendly, very convincing, very the type of person who likes to give jokes here and there. Though at times he kind of sees Peel Travers as someone who's very difficult to work with, and he tries his very best to understand what makes her tick, what makes her the type of person she is today. But ultimately, they get a mutual understanding and they do have this type of respect for each other and a type of friendship. But earlier in the film, they kind of have this type of difficulty with working with each other because she has her own ideas, he has his own ideas. She wants to follow hers, he wants to follow his. It's almost quite impossible which side should be the best solution. And wow, it just shows how much great chemistry these two have and the difficulties that these two have working with each other. Basically, not just as colleagues, but as friends and basically as project partners. But Walt is definitely such a fantastic character as well. He's very likable and very fun to see on screen. And Ralph, my gosh, what a lovable person he is. I mean, sure, Mrs. Travers does disapprove of him first because he kind of has this air of friendliness, which at times Mrs. Travers does find a bit awkward. But still, she warms up to him, he warms up to her. I mean, he's absolutely a fantastic friend to her. I mean, she could easily relate to him, but it does take time, and he could easily relate to her. And that's what I really like about Ralph because he has this sense of optimism and just overall joy and happiness that he feels no matter how bad things are. He always keeps a huge smile on his face and he just goes on with his day. That's the type of person I really like. And that's definitely the type of characteristic that I love in Ralph. He's very optimistic, he's friendly, he's cheerful, and he's definitely a lot of fun to watch. And his chemistry with P.L. Travers' friends work very, very well. Then we have the Sherman brothers, which at times were, well, they were very funny to watch. I will admit that. They do have some funny lines, and their chemistry with each other definitely was awesome. But still, they were a lot of fun to watch in this film, and I'm very aware that they're based off from the real life Sherman brothers. The same thing with every character in this movie. They're almost based from every real life person involved in making the Mary Poppins movie, which has become a household name. But still, their presence on this film was definitely just funny to watch. And it probably put a lot of light into such a an air of drama and mystery and basically a lot of themes or things that basically make this movie quite tear jerking. So they basically provide a lot of comic relief, which I definitely like once in a while. And then we have the manager, or excuse me, the screenwriter, Tom Don DeGra- Don DeGrati. Yeah, he's also that likable as well, and he's really fun as a character. But by far, my most favorite characters definitely have to be Travis's family, her father, her mother, and of course, Auntie Ellie. Now, her father is definitely quite interesting of a character. He's very loving towards Pamela, birth name Helen, and he's very charismatic. However, he has one problem. He's an alcoholic. And I could really see his suffering, especially when he yells at his own wife. Now, that is just, that for me is just sad and just nerve wracking because let's face it, things like this do happen in real life. And how he's portrayed is it's not stereotypical. He's not abusive. He's not horrible. But he's basically a man who's torn between the love of his family and torn between his own personal demons. I mean, he's faced with a lot of problems and shit going on with his life that we have no choice but to just sympathize with him. We want him to live forever with Pamela, but things just doesn't don't end happily with him. That for me was just quite sad. I know I don't really want to spoil because anything from this movie, but still, there are moments in this film that kind of made me shed a tear once in a while, and this was definitely one of those moments. But going back to Travis's father, he's likable. He takes care of his own children very well. He does have fun with them and he loves them so much, but we can also see his problems, and he is that involving and interesting of a character. The same thing can be said about his wife, Margaret. She is a very wonderful mother as well, but she also suffers from these type of problems that go on with her husband. She wants to help him, but she knows for a fact that he can't be helped any longer. And another very noticeable detail about P.L. Travers's father, the thing about him is that his name Travers was pretty much the inspiration of the author of Mary Poppins's pen name because her birth name was Helen Goff and she basically named herself Pamela Lyndon Travers. So that's a little bit of trivia out of the way. But still, Margaret is a very loving mother, yet at times she suffers a lot. She can't take the fact that her own husband has succumbed to alcoholism and has found himself yelling at her a lot. And that pretty much breaks her heart. Sure, he doesn't beat her, but he yells at her. That's probably one of those things that he does to her that just seems quite uncalled for and horrible. But that doesn't make him a bad man. Besides, these things happen, and it's just wow, it really shows me that these things really did happen in Travers's life, even though it is quite fictionalized. But still, it's really heart wrenching. And then we have Auntie Ellie, who is basically the source of inspiration for Mary Poppins. Yes, she does come in similar to how Mary Poppins was introduced, but not with all the flying and the carrying of the umbrella thing. But she does come in quite similarly, and she's basically prompt. She's quite firm, yet she's quite kindly as well. And I could really see that she's basically the source of inspiration for the magical nanny that we know as Mary Poppins. So I could really see where P.L. Travers got her idea of Mary Poppins. It's all thanks to Aunt Ellie. And she's definitely a likable character as well. In fact, every character in this movie were, was all likable, strong, and they all have their weaknesses, but we're able to relate to them very well. And that's what this film really did for me. I related to every single character on such a personal level, but the one character I definitely related to the most was definitely, without a doubt, P.L. Travers, because sure, on the outside in terms of this film, she does seem quite stuck up and has a high and mighty opinion of how this thing should go. But once you really get to know her behind closed doors, you see a more fragile creature that longs to be loved, that longs to be appreciated and not just be treated like some angry, stuck up British woman, but she just basically wants to be understood and heard. And I could definitely relate to her on that. Now, going into the acting, I would have to say that with Emma Thompson, it's nothing new for her playing such dignified and proud and strong women. Of course, I've seen her as Nanny McPhee, and I definitely felt that she did a really good job in that role. And she was able to get all those nuances of the character, and she didn't really overact. In fact, she underacted, which I felt was very, very beautiful. And plus, I heard her voice as Captain Amelia from Treasure Planet. She was able to capture all of that dignity and a little bit of that masculinity that makes Captain Amelia a very lovable character in Treasure Planet. Here, as P.L. Travers, I thought she was just fantastic. She was able to get all of those nuances that makes P.L. Travers, well, a person, and she basically had this presence on film. She was very articulate. She handled the language very, very well to the point where, well, she is P.L. Travers. And what can you do if you're a veteran actress who has done a lot of work here and there? That just shows you how magnificent of an actress she is. And after several years of being in this career, she still has such wonderful acting chops, and I definitely hope that she'll be in more films in the near future. She really has this type of dignified and somewhat sympathetic presence on film, especially in the moments when she's by herself. We see why she became the person that she is. We are able to sympathize with her. And I definitely felt that Emma Thompson gave such a gorgeous and heart-rendering portrayal of P.L. Travers. In fact, she was nominated an award at the, let me scroll up right here. She was nominated an award at the BAFTA Awards, the Golden Globe Awards, the SAG Awards, and the Critics' Choice Awards. And the only awards that she's won were, let me check which one. Let's see. The Las Vegas Film Critics Society. Those were the awards that she won as Best Actress. So she did such a beautiful job with playing all the nuances, all of those, well, feelings and ideas that make P.L. Travers such a relatable person. And Tom Hanks, yes, I understand. I've watched the Black Critic guys and AniMat's reviews on Saving Mr. Banks. Of course, it's obvious. Tom Hanks almost looks like he doesn't really look like Walt Disney in the slightest. He really doesn't look like him. They could have casted another actor, but ranting aside, I definitely have to say that he played every single nuance and every single trait that Walt Disney had beautifully. He was able to make Walt Disney such a sympathetic character and a very likable one at that. And I was able to, relate to him very well of what he goes through. So basically, yes, it's obvious. Even though Tom Hanks doesn't really look like Walt Disney in the slightest, I definitely have to say he was able to pull off this role very beautifully and very convincingly in terms of emotions and in terms of, well, sucking me in just right just right there. And he does a very great job portraying all of those nuances and just being Uncle Walt, even though he doesn't really look like him. Then we have the Sherman brothers, played by B.J. Novak and Jason Schwartzman. I felt those two were very fun to watch. I mean, seriously, there are times that I laughed my head off watching them trying to impress um, Mrs. Travers with their new composition for the film Mary Poppins. It was definitely a lot of fun seeing Novak and Schwartzman as the brothers, but Paul Giamatti definitely gave such a lovable and very sweet performance as Ralph. And Colin Farrell, fantastic work as the father right there. I've seen him in Winter's Tale, and here I definitely felt that he did a fantastic job as well. But Ruth Wilson, oh my gosh. I've never really seen much of her, but I will say this that the Black Critic guy definitely felt that Ruth Wilson gave such a magnificent performance. And I wholeheartedly agree with Tony Whatley II, aka the Black Critic guy. I definitely agree with his view on Ruth Wilson. I haven't really seen The Lone Ranger, but I don't really want to. I don't really plan to even. But I might see in the near future, maybe just for the sake of reviewing it. But going with that aside, I definitely felt that Ruth Wilson definitely gave such a beautiful portrayal and such a heart wrenching and heart rendering portrayal of the mother, Margaret. She was just so innocent and so beautiful. I mean, when she waded into the water just to kill herself, you could really see the depression, the anguish, and all of those negative emotions in her eyes that just tell her, I can't take it anymore. I give up. And then she wades in the water. And then we see Annie Rose Buckley trying to save her. I definitely felt that was just a great moment where I saw Ruth Wilson at her best. And speaking of which, Annie Rose Buckley as the young P.L. Travers was very, very great. I could see a bright future with this young actress. I really hope that they will give her a lot more films in the near future. And like I said, there is a bright, bright future for her. In fact, every actor and actress in this film gave their best. Even if it's a small role or a big role, they all gave their best. And this film really does shine beautifully. And the music. Now, most of the background music uses a lot of piano and jazz music. And of course, there was some Disney songs like Hi Ho and Chim Chimichurri and Let's Go Fly a Kite. Now, Let's Go Fly a Kite. That sequence with P.L. Travers and the Sherman brothers and Don was just simply the best moment of the film when they were all dancing around and with P.L. Travers just smiling and just really loving the tune of the music as it's just so beautiful when Thompson and Schwartzman and Novak and let me check who the actor is for Don. Yeah, and the actor for Don, Bradley Whitford. When Bradley Whitford, Thompson, Schwartzman, and Novak basically danced to Let's Go Fly a Kite, it was just so beautiful. The music definitely is great. And sure, a lot of the background music, like I said, relies mostly on piano and some jazz. But I thought it definitely suited the era of this film, which is the 1960s. But still, it was that great. Oh, and one more thing. During the fair scene in one of Travis's flashback, I was able to hear Men of Harlech played by a brass orchestra, and it was just so gorgeous because, well, I've heard this song ever since I was 10, and it was sung by Charlotte Church. And I definitely love Men of Harlech. It was just such a beautiful song to listen to, even though it was just seen at the flashback. But still, the music was just fantastic, making great use of both Mary Poppins music and some original music as well. Heck, the original music was basically nominated for an Academy Award, but yeah, it didn't really win that award. So overall, this was definitely such a great film to watch, and it was just so emotional on many levels, and most of all, it was very beautiful. I rate this film 5 out of 5 stars. It is that recommendable. If you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and watch it. And it's really that fantastic. You will basically shed a tear from your eyes once you've seen Travers' experience in childhood. And just to get something out of the way, I've also done a little bit of research regarding what happened between Travers and Disney in real life. Stated that Travers was continually unhappy with the results that Disney made. That after the showing of Mary Poppins, she and Disney never spoke to each other again, and she didn't really want those books of hers, the Mary Poppins series, to be turned into films by Disney ever again. But still, this film, even if you don't really know the life of P.L. Travers or Walt Disney himself too, was just very, very fantastic. I would highly recommend that you first watch Mary Poppins and then watch this film. I mean, they really go great together because you really get to know how Mary Poppins was made after after watching Mary Poppins and then watching this film. It will make you understand, and it's just that emotional. And of course, I really want to thank Tony Whatley II for also recommending this film to me as well. I mean, Tony, if you're watching this review of Saving Mr. Banks, I definitely agree with everything that you say regarding this movie. And I have to say, I definitely enjoyed it as well. It was just so much fun. It was such a huge pleasure, and I loved it to no end. And this is something I can recommend to anybody. Whether you're a Disney fan or not, this film will definitely make you teary eyed, make you smile, and make you just feel happy. And make you feel that life may be short, but just as long as you can make something beautiful, then you know for a fact that it will be a great life that you live. Like I said, I highly recommend it to everyone. I don't care if you're 10, if you're 5, if you're 4, or if you're 50 or 60, 70, 80, or 90 or 100. I don't care if you're a Disney fan or not. This film is really that recommendable. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in to my next review. Well, next 2 reviews tomorrow because the first review is going to be a review of the Academy Award winning Gravity, which I'll watch tomorrow afternoon and do expect a review in the late afternoon. And I'll be watching a concert in the evening, which is celebrating Christian Paul, Christian Philipp Emanuel Bach's 300th birthday at the Konzerthaus am Gendarmenmarkt. So do expect a review tomorrow evening as well. So that's basically 2 reviews that you'll expect in one day. Until then, this is Antoni signing off and wishing you all a good night.